Good evening. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope you had a nice weekend, or at least a tolerable one. Today I ran across an article to where now the power companies are apparently starting to warn people about not having enough energy shortages here in the United States. And it shouldn't be surprising. It was stuff that we were talking about even last year, couple years ago, that we would be running into. And I've got an article, but part of the reason why, and I'm sure the article points this out. To be honest, I didn't read it all word for word. But they were trying to do this transition to green energy, and the truth of the matter is we are far from ready to do that. And it's a process. And unfortunately, we don't have anybody working in real earnest at making this reality, meaning an alternative form of energy. We got a bunch of game playing going on, is what we've got. And however, we've got a bunch of idiots that found their way into power and thought that, and no pun intended in that, but thought that they could just start flipping switches, and, this whole idealism thing didn't work out so well. So now that they are actually expecting, and I know in certain areas they typically always expect energy shortages. Well, now it appears that it looks like it's going to be much more widespread. And again, a lot of this is due to a policy that started shutting down certain plants and stuff like that when they really didn't have a reliable way of replacing that energy. And so that's where we're sitting today. And this administration seems hell-bent on not getting things back moving again, and anything from power to the economy to anything. The only thing he cares about running is his ice cream machine. And, so it looks like we could be facing some issues this summer, a bit more widespread than normal, I would say. It is what it is, and I would tell you all just to be as prepared as you can for it. It's something that I firmly expect. And I think over a lot more of a widespread area. I don't think it's going to be in the typical places, because there's places in California, and I think there's places on the East Coast, if I'm not mistaken, that it's not the most uncommon thing to have a power outage due to overuse of energy, really hot days and stuff like that. So we shall see. I must say, I find it interesting. And the reason I say that is because more and more homes are being, how do you put it? They're being done with electric. They're being done with electric water heaters, electric furnaces, electric stoves. A lot of homes now are going all electric, and that's what they're kind of trying to push. Well, here's the thing. To heat with electricity, it takes a whole lot of power. A lot. It takes a lot more to heat than it takes to cool. Okay? Let's see if you can follow me here. If it takes so much more electricity to heat than what it takes air conditioning to cool, when I'm talking about amount of wattage, then why is it that we have these shortage issues in the summer months and not the winter months. And I realize that there's a lot of people that heat with gas and wood and stuff like that. Well, my point is that's increasingly changing, and more homes, and I guarantee you that the demand on the power lines during the average winter is more than what it is during the average summer. So I don't get how they have these issues in the summer versus the winter. It doesn't make sense. If you go and look on your, if you've got central air, it'll give you ratings for both the AC side and the heating side. If you've got an electric furnace, what it takes to run either side, either the heat or the cooling. And you'll see it takes a whole hell of a lot more for that heat. A lot more. So anyway. You have a sip of coffee. Trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to talk about before I've got a few tabs open, not a ton. It's a Sunday, so we've got all the other stuff to go, the headlines to go through. So I didn't want to even attempt to throw up a bunch of tabs. So and the article that I'm going to be talking about, I actually tweeted out where the article, I guess, originated from, which would be the Wall Street Journal. But being that I don't have a subscription with the Wall Street Journal, I can only read about that much of the article. And so I put the headline in Google and found a bunch of, aggregate type of sites that have taken, the important part, at least the text, and put it on their site. So that way we can see the article too. Have to kick my own ass if I had a subscription to the Wall Street Journal. All right, so you guys might want to come along for the ride. Hell, another sip of coffee. Pardon me. That one snuck up on me. All right. California's grid operator said Friday, and by the way, you saw the headline, electricity shortage warnings grow across the U.S. Says California's grid operator said Friday that it anticipated a shortfall in supplies this summer, especially if extreme heat, wildfires, or delays in bringing new power sources online exacerbate the constraints. The Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, or MISO, which oversees a large regional grid spanning much of the Midwest, said late last month the capacity shortages may face it to take emergency measures to meet summer demand and flagged the risk of outages in Texas, where a number of power plants lately went offline for maintenance. The grid operator warned of tight conditions during a heat wave expected to last into the next week. The risk of electricity shortages is rising throughout the U.S. as traditional power plants are being retired more quickly than they can be replaced by renewable energy and battery storage. Okay. I don't know of any systems as far as like the grid that really utilizes any type of battery storage, because greed is preventing us from having a type of battery storage that is feasible. So, it is what it is. Power grids are feeling the strain as the U.S. makes a historic transition from conventional power plants fueled by coal and natural gas to cleaner forms of energy such as wind and solar power, and aging nuclear plants are slated for retirement in many parts of the country. Speaking of that, I did watch Meltdown, 3 Mile Island, I think was the name of it. That's on Netflix right now. I did watch that. Not a fan I am not a fan of nuclear power plants. I think it's idiotic. I get I get all the pro arguments for it, but I'm sorry, you can't just overlook that one big con staring you in the face that, an entire state could be freaking glowing because of a major malfunction. I just, I look at Fukushima, I look at Chernobyl, and I can't just turn my head to that and say, it ain't gonna happen to here. It ain't gonna happen here. I'm not that foolish. I'm not that naive. I'm not that complacent. Anything can happen. Fukushima was an earthquake, right? It wouldn't have mattered what kind of backups. No matter what, they had all that stuff. They had all the redundancies. They had everything. But they had a big freaking earthquake. And that, there was no way for them to be able to prepare for. So why take the chance? It makes no sense to me. Right? I mean, in a logical manner. Now, to them, it's a lot of profit being made. It's a lot of weapons material being made. There are reasons why they do it. But, I'm not a fan. So anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to make this a soapbox about how I feel about nuclear power, but says here the challenge is that wind and solar farms, which are among the cheapest forms of power generation, don't produce electricity at all times and need large batteries to store their output for later use. While a large amount of battery storage is under development, regional grid operators have lately warned that the pace may not be fast enough to offset the closures of traditional power plants that can work around the clock. Speeding the build-out of renewable energy and batteries has become an especially difficult proposition amid supply chain challenges and inflation. Most recently, a probe by the Commerce Department into whether Chinese solar manufacturers are circumventing trade tariffs on solar panels has halted imports of key components needed to build new solar farms and effectively brought the U.S. solar industry to a standstill. Faced with prospect of having to call for blackouts when demand exceeds supply, many grid operators are now grappling with the same question: how to encourage the build-out of batteries and other new technologies while keeping traditional power plants from closing too quickly. Every market around the world is trying to deal with the same issue, said Brad Jones. It's really a pretty simple solution, but there's a big problem in the way of it. Okay? The simple solution is to encourage, and when I say encourage, I mean in many different ways, encourage people to go off the grid. Give them one hell of a tax refund or something like that for getting off the grid, 100%. As individual homes. They always talk about how energy is so closely related to national security, and I would agree. I won't argue that. In my opinion, if you truly wanted national security, you would encourage as many independent power producers as possible, meaning people in their own homes. Whether solar's the right answer for them, wind, hydro, but just personal household-sized systems to start taking homes off the grid. But there's a problem there. The people that are currently making the big bucks from energy would not completely, but largely be cut out from a lot of that money. And I mean, that's a cutout, because once you remove that meter, they're done. You're not going to be paying them any more money. They don't want that. Just like the doctors. They don't want to cure you. They just want to keep you alive, but they want to keep you coming back. It's no different. That's why we just amazingly can't, with all this technology, all this crazy stuff that we can do, we just can't make a good battery. Some damnedest thing. Damnedest thing. I mean, they're literally like nano-robot things that, I mean, it's unbelievable what they can do. But they just can't build a good battery. Damn. I'm not foolish. I've always been a science nut. Electronics, electricity has always been a large interest. And that includes power generation and power storage. And so I've always kind of kept my eye on the battery technology, battery chemistry technology, literally as a child. I sit there and I watched, alkaline and, rechargeable batteries, and, they just kept progressing. And now, as far as I know, the best consumer available battery right now is the LiFePO 4, if I'm not mistaken. And it slowly gets a little better and better. LiFePO 4 is quite a bit better than Li-ion. And, pardon me. I think the next technology they allow us to have is going to be that much better yet. So, I agree with you, Hexafus. He said, don't make the mistake and tie your solar to the grid. And I agree with you 110%. Now, mind you, and folks may need to know this, you have to look into your local laws where you are at, because there's a lot of places, believe it or not, where it's actually illegal for you to completely go off the grid. And likewise, there's places that say, okay, well, you can have solar, but you have to use a grid tie system, right? And then there's just a bunch of nonsense. And I really don't know what to tell you on that. I've got my opinions on it, My opinions are, if it's your property and you buy more property in the form of solar panels and power inverters and battery storage and solar charge controllers, right? And with that property, you start producing your own energy, and demand that the power company take their property, known as a power meter, back. I don't give a damn what their laws say, and I'm just going to be real honest with you. And I know there's been people. There's videos. You can go out there and find articles and videos. There's I think down in Florida, there's a real popular case where a vet was he had a mobile home, and he was trying to just run it off grid, just off solar power, and it was literally illegal for him to disconnect from the power grid. And this guy wound up doing a little time in jail and stuff like that over it all. I mean, it's crazy. And all the dude wanted to do was go off grid and have them take their damn meter back and be done with them. I thought that in this country that we couldn't be mandated, and that got blown to hell, by the way, with the car insurance thing. So once they did that with car insurance, that was the end of that. So not supposed to be able to mandate you have anything, like any type of service or anything like that. Anyway. And then there's the other thing. There's laws that, you may not know this. There's what is it they're called? There are laws that basically say that a utility company has to allow competition. And I can't remember the exact name of the law, but there's a law, and I believe it's a federal thing, to where they have to allow competition in a utility, right? Nobody could monopolize the utility markets. And so that begs the question, if you put solar panels on the roof of your home and installed your own system to have your own alternative energy, are you not just becoming your own competitor? Or not your own competitor, but you know what I mean. You are becoming a competitor. Not that you're going to cost them any money other than what you would utilize. I don't know. It just seems like, these hack lawyers can do an awful lot when they want. It seems to me like there's a lot of things that really need to be talked about. Even Fourth Amendment rights when it comes to this. And I mean that. Even Fourth Amendment rights needs to be discussed when it comes to them not allowing people to go off the grid. Because that's your property. It's your home, your property. And when I say your property, I'm not just talking about the land. I'm not just talking about the structure that's on it. And I'm not talking just about the solar panels and all the other goodies that you've got for your system. But that's yours. And if I'm not mistaken, as long as you aren't harming anybody else, being a nuisance of any kind or anything like that, they ain't supposed to be able to say jack. I just don't get how they get the angle to make it illegal to go off the grid. Sorry, I know that's a subject that I will just ramble about, because it's crazy. Anyway, let me continue. I'm not going to read all of it. It says, interim chief executive of the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, which operates the state's power grid, we're all trying to find ways to utilize as much of our renewable resources as possible, and at the same time make sure that we have enough dispatchable generation to manage reliability. The risk of outages resulting from supply constraints come amid other challenges straining reliability of the grid. Large sustained outages have occurred with greater frequency over the past 2 decades, in part because the grid has become more vulnerable to failure with age and an uptick in severe weather events exacerbated by climate change. Well, there we go. A push to electrify home heating, and that's what I was talking about, and cooking, and the expected growth of electric vehicles may increase power demand in the coming years, putting further pressure on the system. California regulators on Friday said as much as 3,800 megawatts of new supplies may face delays through 2025. Such delays would pose a major challenge for the state, which is racing to procure a huge amount of renewable energy and storage to offset the closure of several gas-fired power plants as well as a nuclear plant, says Governor Gavin Newsom recently said he would consider moving to keep the nuclear plant Diablo Canyon online to reduce the risk of shortages. We need to make sure that we have sufficient new resources in place and operational before we let some of the retirements go, said Mark Rothletter, Chief Operating Officer of the California Independent System Operator, which operates the state's power grid. Otherwise, we are putting ourselves potentially at risk of having insufficient capacity. The reliability question stirred a strong debate in Texas, where a freak winter storm last year caused power plants of all kinds to trip offline, forcing the grid operator to call for days-long blackouts to keep supply in line with demand. Many problems played a part. Some power plants weren't prepared for sub-freezing temperatures, while others couldn't operate for lack of fuel. But the failures collectively exposed the vulnerability of the state's power market and resulted in calls for change. Texas is now debating what would be a major philosophical, I can't say it right now, shift for its power market, paying power generators ahead of time for resources that might be needed. Instead of just compensating them for actual power sold, the approach would largely benefit incumbent generators, including NRG Energy Incorporated and Vistra Corporation, which own numerous conventional power plants with the potential to profit from such contracts. Anyway, I will go ahead. It's not got much more here. The idea has prompted pushback from some battery and renewable energy companies, including Eolian LP, which has proposed incentives for batteries, small gas turbines, and other technologies capable of ramping up to meet increases in electricity demand. The most important thing we heard after the freeze is we need to keep the lights on to make sure this grid is reliable, said Peter Lake, chairman of the Public Utility Commission of Texas. There's nothing worse than turning Texas off. The MISO, which recently warned of potential supply shortages resulting from higher than expected summer demand, has lately undertaken an effort to better value different types of resources based on their ability to support the grid at different times during the year and under various conditions. It is also working to improve the transfer of power across regions when needed, says MISO Chief Executive John Baer. He said those processes will help the grid operator as the energy transition progresses, but he foresees the risk of near-term shortages. The grid operator has more frequently resorted to emergency measures to shore up supplies in recent years. I am concerned about it, Mr. Baer said. As we move forward, we need to know when you put a solar panel or a wind turbine up, it's not the same as a thermal resource such as gas or coal. And it's not, because it's not an on-demand thing. However, there are other forms that we could be using that are pretty much a constant. There's different types of things that they can put out in the ocean. I know the sea life. Somebody's always going to have something for everything, right? With the windmills, it's the birds. With the solar panels, I think again with the birds. And give me a break. So there's these current machines, and then there's this really cool tower. And I have seen this, and this seems to be like an incredible idea. And I'm pretty sure it does work pretty much all the time, nonstop. I don't think it stops working. The thing of it is this thing is huge. That's the only downfall about it, is this thing is absolutely enormous. Imagine a nuclear power plant, and you see the very definitive kind of cone-shaped kind of building, right? Similar to that, but really tall. And the way it works is, I guess, with the what is it? I guess it would be the cooling of the air. There's it draws air through it because of the shape of it. You've got the air inlets in the bottom. You're mixing that air, and just mixing those two airs, you're going to cause an air current. And you just put turbines on that, and you collect the power from it. There's an actual name for it. I want to say they've actually got one built. And from my understanding, it works really well. I cannot remember the name of the... Hang on. I mean, there's solutions. There's been several solutions, but nobody will do it. Why? Because greed. Hang on. Nope. Not a wind turbine. Wait a minute. Giant tower in the desert. Yeah. Okay, so this is roughly the idea. Okay. Right there. Where is this? This is from 2014. 2014, right? Giant tower in the desert could generate as much power as the Hoover Dam. The solar wind downdraft tower will generate huge amounts of power if it's ever built. Let's see. It stands 2,250 feet high, would be taller than the new Freedom Tower in New York. Let's see. 120 huge turbines at its base. Enough pumping capacity to keep on. See, I wasn't talking out my butt. This is something energy production, renewable energies, energy storage, stuff like that. I geek out on it. So I always kind of keep up on what's what. And there are solutions. They just won't use any of them. Always an excuse why we can't do it. Always an excuse. Just can't do it. Hey, though, they can come up with an mRNA vaccine in record time, though. What? Oh, yeah. Oh gosh, I think I heard about that. I think it was probably around 2014 when I heard about that tower. So, and I thought, man, that's a brilliant idea, and it would work, and they could use those things in so many different places. It's unreal. And it's just like, there's ways to bring water to, people in the desert and stuff like that. And when I say bring water, I don't necessarily mean bring water, but they could actually pull water out of the air. And there are systems that you can look up that have been made to do that. And I know that there's small systems that you and I now can buy that are on the market. Now I'm talking a big machine that is able to produce quite a bit of water. And I've read up stuff about that too. But the problem is there's not a big profit, because it's not like you could put something like that up and, one of them probably wouldn't be even remotely enough to take care of a row of houses. I mean, they don't produce that much. So there's no profit. There's no money to be made. So, we'll find some reason why we can't do it. And that's what happens with the power industry. And when it comes down to it, they want to keep that money in fossil fuels because, well, the people that have made it to the top of the mountain on fossil fuels don't want to give that up. So, well, damn, we just can't come up with good energy storage. I don't know. No, and I've said this before, go look. The ingenuity, the ideas, the designs, they're out there. There have been dozens upon dozens of battery chemistries and technologies that would be monumentally better than even LiFePO 4. But if you go and look, those patents are owned by big oil companies. And if you dig, you'll find out that they weren't the ones that came up with it. Some Joe Blow came up with it. And before that idea could hit the market, they bought the rights to the idea, the patent. So, it's sad. It really, truly is. I'm all about capitalism. I truly am all about capitalism, but I am not about predatory business, and I'm not about a level of capitalism that it starts to become a derogatory thing on a populace, if I said those words correctly. Because I think it's, I think it's absolutely crazy that we can't just have technology. Look at the battles that we have, even in the medical direction. And I won't go too deep in this because I don't want to get slapped by YouTube. But look at all of the different things that the governments, and I'm not just talking about the stuff involving the last 2 years, but even way beyond that. Look at all the different ways that the government has tried to step in between you and your own health decisions, right? Vaping, the vaping industry, right? They have done nothing but fight the vaping industry from day one, okay? And here in countries like the UK, they're putting vape shops in hospitals to get people to quit smoking because of how much how much harm reduction, I want to say it correctly, how much harm reduction is done by vaping. No, it's not harmless. Breathing the air you're breathing right now is not harmless, but it's a hell of a lot better than all that tar and everything else that you're taking in from the cancer sticks. And I'm not knocking anybody for smoking. I couldn't do it no more. And it's a good thing I quit because my health went to shit right at the same time. So, I have nothing against people that smoke. I'm not one of those people that, no, whatever, you know. I'm the type of person, you smoke and you come in my home, well, sit down and have a cigarette. I'm not going to sit there and you can't smoke because I quit smoking. I'm not like that. I actually enjoy the smell of a cigarette, the taste of a cigarette. I like it, as most smokers do. But I just had to. I couldn't afford it. I mean, plain and simple, I couldn't afford it. I can afford to vape. I can't afford to smoke. Anyway, how do we get all the way over to here? Anyway, let me move along, as they say. Move along, damn it. So that was what I've got on the energy thing, and I know I get on a soapbox with that. I'm telling you, it's been a lifelong goal to stick it to the power company. It has been a lifelong goal, and I've said this before. At a young age, I can remember hearing a conversation between my mom and my dad, and they were highly upset because they weren't going to have the money in time to prevent the power from being shut off. And when I say in time, meaning they wouldn't get home from work in time to go pay it before they came and shut the power off that day. And if I recall right, they did shut it off, if I'm not mistaken, and I want to say they came back out the same day. If I'm not mistaken, they did come back out and get it turned on, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember exactly. But I could see how frustrated that my dad was. My dad was a hard worker. And, I'm sorry, but my opinion is I think anybody that works hard, and I don't care if you're flipping burgers at a McDonald's, if you're working stocking shelves at a Walmart, or if you're working in a machine shop, you deserve a living. You deserve a living. And if you've got some type of incredible skills or whatever, then you damn straight deserve a better living than an entry-level job. But everybody, including entry-level jobs, deserve to make a living. To think otherwise is just insane. I don't get it. I don't get the push for communism in this country, because that's what that is. Expecting people to work for low wages and then letting the government fill in the rest with subsidies, that's communism. That's a form of communism. So, but on the same note, we can't just go jacking up minimum wages and all that, because that don't work either. There's a whole lot to it. But anyway, I'm going to get on another subject and get on the soapbox, and we're not going to go there. Anyway, let me continue on. Focus, Mike. Focus. Use the force. I tried to use the force once and I shat myself. Kidding. I was like, right? Yeah. There was force, all right. All right. Sorry. Give me a break. It's Sunday. It's my first night back. All right. Let's see. Germany warns of global famine. That's good news, right? It says here the world is about to face an acute food crisis due to the skyrocketing food prices. German Economic Cooperation and Development Minister Svenja Schulz told the Bild newspaper on Saturday, warning about a looming famine not seen since World War II. The minister has named the COVID-19 pandemic and Russia's ongoing military operation in Ukraine as its causes. The situation is highly dramatic, the minister told the German tabloid in a late Saturday interview, adding that according to the UN World Food Program, more than 300 million people are already suffering from acute hunger, and the UN has to constantly revise this data upwards. Food prices around the world have grown by a third and have reached record levels, Schulz has warned, adding that the bitter message is that we are facing the worst famine since World War II, which could see millions die. In its May 6 statement, the World Food Program has warned that 44 million people around the world are marching towards starvation because Ukrainian grain cannot reach them, and called for the Black Sea ports to be opened so that this grain could be delivered to the needy. Minister Schulz was quick to blame Moscow for the development by accusing Russian President Vladimir Putin of waging a war through hunger. She claimed that Russia had stolen grain from Ukraine and is now taking advantage of nations depending on Russian and Ukrainian agricultural products by supposedly offering food only to those who are unequivocally pro-Russian. The ministers also claimed that the fact that 40 nations that are home to half of the world's population did not condemn Russia's actions in Ukraine was supposedly a result of their vulnerability to food blackmail. She didn't offer any specific evidence to support this statement, though. Let's see. And I could read all into it, but you get the point. I think it's important to pay attention when multiple nations, and we could sit there and go back and forth on whether or not this is orchestrated, whether it's not, whether it's just happenstance, but that doesn't really matter, really. What matters is, are you ready? Are you ready to be able to fill that gap, that void? Are you prepared to be able to live on some food stores for a while, or at least maybe supplement with some food stores for a while? Because I think that's what we're looking at. And I don't know how bad it's... I have no way, I don't have a crystal ball to have any idea how bad it's going to get. But it's not looking good. And, governments around the world are really speaking out against, or about this, not against this, but about this. And even the U.S. government. I watched a video earlier, and it was probably, I think it was Full Spectrum Survival, I think. And he was talking about how this country's warned its citizens, and this country's warned its citizens, and this country's warned, but the U.S. hasn't. And that's not true. The U.S. government has absolutely warned us to get ready. Have we listened? Because they have multiple times. Multiple times. Now, they don't tell you to be as prepared as what I would recommend, not even remotely. But I know that some have, at one point they were saying, a couple of weeks, be prepared to be able to go a couple of weeks. And then I think that got upped, didn't it? I think it got up to like 3 months or something like that. But they kind of quietly muttered that and hadn't said anything since. But they did. They did. The thing of it is they're not going to sit there and keep going over and over and over about it because they got midterms coming up. They don't want you thinking about that kind of stuff. You might start asking questions like, what do you plan on doing about this? And they ain't got answers. They've got bullshit. They've got plenty of that, but they don't have answers. Anywho,
Another sip of coffee. I'm almost already done with this. Damn. Ukrainian forces hold up at Azovstal, and I don't know how to say that, plant vow to continue fighting. Now read this and then kind of give you my thoughts. Ukraine's forces entrenched at the Azovstal steel plant in the Black Sea port city of Mariupol have no plans to surrender. Fighters with the Ukrainian neo-Nazi Azov regiment have told journalists on Sunday during a video press conference. A man identified as, Io Samolenko something, described as an Azov fighter and a military intelligence officer by various media, has called an option of surrender unacceptable, adding that it would be a gift for the enemy, referring to the Russian troops in the Donbass Republic's militias controlling most of Mariupol. We will continue to fight as long as we live. Oh gosh, that name, yeah, okay. Palomar, a deputy commander of the Azov regiment, has said. Samoylenko, that might be Samoylenko. I have no idea how to pronounce this stuff, and I really do seriously apologize that I can't. I'm not trying to make fun of anybody's name. I actually hate that I can't pronounce names. Anyway, specified that evacuation of the Ukrainian forces from the territory of the steel plant is only viable option and demanded that Kiev take decisive steps to facilitate this. He has also added that the forces holed up at the plant are ready to accept assistance from any nation except for Russia and its allies. Previously, a commander in Ukrainian Marines also entrenched the Azovstal, I wish I knew how to say it, plant and asked Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan for such help. Yeah, I do. I really try to say names correctly. I've got a friend that's he's Czech, and he tells people to call him Jerry or Jiri, and he spells it Jiri. But his name, and I'm sure I don't get it exact because I can't do the little clicky thingy, but his name is pronounced Yurzi, but I can't do that little thing, that Yurzi. I can't get it right. But anyway, I try, and when I address him with Yurzi because I try. I want to make that attempt to say his name correctly, even if I don't have the tongue to do it right, so to speak. So, I don't know. It's just one of those OCD things with me. I think I don't know. I'm just a weird person, but I think it's a sign of respect. When you try to say somebody's name correctly, I think that's a sign of respect. Not that incorrectly saying their name means you are disrespecting them, but I think somebody should try. And I like unique names. I don't know. Names are cool. They can be. I've got a boring name. Let's see. The intelligence officer has also admitted that there are still hundreds of injured soldiers at the plant and called on Kiev to evacuate them together with the medics who, according to him, are exhausted. Palomar has, meanwhile, criticized Ukrainian politicians who praised earlier efforts to evacuate civilians from the plant as a success. Have all the civilians been evacuated? We can't say for sure because no international organizations, no Ukrainian politicians have come to the plant, the Azov Regiment deputy commander has said, adding that some politicians have no delicacy but only cynicism that allows them to call it a successful civilian evacuation. He has rebuked Kiev for abandoning Mariupol and for failing to evacuate its residents who remain trapped in the city during the fighting. So, I thought this was probably an important story to cover because, of course, as you well know, and everybody's been talking about it, tomorrow is an important day for Russia. And I don't know what tomorrow holds. I will tell you that I'm a bit nervous because I don't know what may or may not happen. None of us do. But I would advise you to keep your head on a swivel. I would advise you to make sure that you have your preps in order. And I would advise you to put everything in the position you would if you were going to expect a power outage. Not that that's necessarily what may be coming down the pike, but we don't know. So that's what my advice to all of you would be. You know, don't go running around the house screaming with your arms up in the air and nothing like that. Don't freak out. No reason to panic or anything. There's nothing to panic about. Don't panic if there's nothing to panic about. But it's always a good idea when you're in a time period where something could more likely happen. You know, have that flashlight handy. You know, I know where mine is at all times. I don't keep it on me. I need to get another small flashlight, but one that I can fit in my Leatherman case, a little AAA one. I need to replace mine I lost. But my other one, my 18650 light, if I was very concerned at all, I would have it in here. But I leave it where to me is the smartest place to leave it, which is on the headboard in the bedroom. There I've got a flashlight in the middle of the night. If I wake up and there's no power or what have you, I've got a flashlight. Bam, right there. On the door over there, on the handle of the door for the closet, is a headlamp that runs on dual 18650 batteries. It's always charged up. It's right there. I know right where it's at. It's easy to grab. Now, this is how I live. And I understand that a lot of people may not take those particular precautions in life. And to me, it's not a big deal to keep a flashlight by your bed, to, you know, keep a headlamp handy where you'll know where it's at, easy to get to. I would just make sure you're doing those things. Make sure you're carrying your EDC. Make sure if you've got a bug out bag, an inch bag, whatever kind of bag, throw it in the trunk or wherever. Make sure you've got it. Just do the things. And I to steal somebody else's saying, but do the things. Just be a good idea. Again, no reason to panic. There's nothing to indicate that we should panic. Not that you should ever panic. You should never panic. It's never time to panic. You should never do that. But my point is, there's no real reason to be concerned yet. But make sure you're prepared, just in case. So, will Russia use a tactical nuke tomorrow? Who knows? I don't think so. But I hate to even say that. Because I've said many, many times over and over, I didn't expect he would do what he's done already. So, anyway, another sip here. Alright, and now I've got this article. This is the last one I have up, then we'll run through the headlines. U.S. running low on weapons as it arms Ukraine, says a congressman. Now, this is coming right from a Republican from Wisconsin here. It says he claimed that the U.S. rush to arm Ukraine has burned through years' worth of weapons stockpiles, hampering Washington's ability to simultaneously arm Taiwan against potential conflict with China. I mean, to hell with us being able to defend our own homeland, right? Jeez, that's a... Anyway, it says, meanwhile, the U.S. vast military industry is lobbying the White House for more contracts. We're running low in terms of our stockpiles. Wow. Gallagher, who sits on the House Armed Service Committee, told Fox News on Friday. We just burned through 7 years of javelins, and that's not only important as we continue to try to help the Ukrainians win in Ukraine, that's important as we try to simultaneously defend Taiwan from aggression from the Chinese Communist Party, which is telling you where that's heading. They are going to need access to some of these same weapon systems, and we simply don't have the stockpiles at present to order to backfill what we spent in Ukraine, he continued. And again, no concern about stockpiles to protect our own country. The Biden administration has thus far given Kiev almost $4 billion in military aid, and President Joe Biden is currently pressing Congress to pass his $33 billion Ukraine aid package, $20 billion of which would fund weapons and other military support for Kiev. Additionally, he is expected to sign the Lend-Lease Act of 2022 on Monday, reviving a piece of the World War II-era legislation to allow the U.S. to export unlimited quantities of weapons to Ukraine. The Javelins referenced by Gallagher are shoulder-fired anti-tank missiles, and the U.S. has already sent more than 5,000 of these to Ukraine. While the Pentagon does not publish exactly how many of which weapons it has in stock, an analyst of the weapons industry-funded Center for Strategic and International Studies told PBS last month that this represents about a third of the U.S. stockpile. The analyst added that around a quarter of the U.S. stockpile of Stinger anti-air missiles have also been gifted to Ukraine. Prior to Gallagher's warning, Representatives Adam Smith and Mike Rogers, also of the House Armed Services Committee, wrote to Joint Chiefs of Staff Mark Milley to order the replenishment of these short-range missile stocks and invest in modernized replacements. Now, mind you, and you've heard this stuff already, let me go ahead and just finish it. Weapons manufacturers are also awaiting contracts from the Pentagon to step up production. These firms, who have already seen their stock prices rise by up to 60% since Russia launched its offensive in Ukraine in February, told the Wall Street Journal last month they need more money to guarantee against shortages. All of this points to the need to think of defense industrial base as a capability in and of itself in which we need to invest, Eric Fanning, president of the Aerospace Industries Association, told the newspaper. We need to be investing in it in a sustained way so when we need it to surge. Okay. In a congressional hearing of late April, David Berteau of the Professional Services Council, a trade association representing government contractors, called on lawmakers to push the Pentagon into increasing production, the paper noted. I'm not seeing a big issue here, though. Amid the Biden administration's unprecedented effort to arm Ukraine, it remains unclear how many American weapons shipments actually end up in Ukrainian hands. Russia has declared supply convoys legitimate targets and has destroyed several warehouses of Western weapons. However, a U.S. intelligence source recently told CNN that Washington has almost zero idea where its weapons ends up, describing the shipments as dropping into a big black hole. Now, the thing that this article did not mention, and you can go verify pretty easily, is that not only do we not have a current production of these Javelins and Stingers, but we can't even get some of the chips for them. So we couldn't produce them if we wanted to. Kind of a problem. So, and the one cat saying that we've already sent out about a third of our stockpile. And another cat saying that we need to worry about being able to send some to Taiwan. But again, I guess we're allowed to use a third of our stockpile to defend our homeland. We're allowed, that they will allow us to use a third of them. How mighty nice of them. Crazy. I mean, you can't look at that and think anything else other than this is orchestrated. They're intentionally trying to bring this country to its knees. They have to be. Nobody is born that stupid, and I don't think it's even possible to work really hard at it all your life to become that stupid. There's people that try, but I don't think that level's quite possible. Anyway. How about we read through some headlines? Run around the house screaming with our hands in the air 3 times just to make it interesting. And then call it a night. Wait for the men in the white suits to show up. Anyway, let's see. Starting obviously with the news that I put out Friday morning. NATO chief, and there's going to be some propaganda headlines in here. I'm going to try to catch them and kind of point them out. I did put them out, but like I've said all along, sometimes the propaganda is just as important to know. Because you kind of need to know what it is that they're making you want to think. And then obviously you need to know the truth. But it's important to know the propaganda too, because you need to know what direction they're trying to send people. Anyway, NATO chief outlines security pledges for Sweden. FDA restricts COVID vaccine. I think that was the Johnson & Johnson one. And I think it's like 18 and older, if I'm not mistaken, is, let's see, U.S. and Food and Drug Administration limited approval of Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine to those over the age of 18, pointing to the dangerous side effects observed in younger recipients. So, there you have it. You know. It's amazing, right? It is absolutely amazing. Blows my mind. Germany may face petrol shortages. European auto giant will stick to coal for now. German industry struggling to replace Russian imports, says a poll. U.S. stocks see worst day since 2020. Remember, this is Friday. U.S. denies it helped sink Russian flagship. States sue Biden over big tech collusion. Europe can't replace Russian gas, says a Shell CEO. Europe buying natural gas at a premium, says the media. Trump considered a strike on Mexico, says the former Pentagon chief. Hungary likens ban on Russian oil to nuke strike. EU states get extra time to reduce reliance on Russian energy, says media. U.S. takes heat from neighbor over Ukraine. British shoppers hit by shrinkflation. We've seen plenty of that here too. Don't patronize us over Ukraine, India tells the Netherlands. Russian officials comment on mobilization reports. Explosion rocks building in Madrid. Moscow allows foreign goods under trade embargo. Ukraine's envoy won't apologize for insulting German chancellor. Again, we're still on Friday's stuff. Ukraine's neighbor sees future without border. Ukraine turning into cocaine hub, says Europol. Oh, Europe. Did I say? I said Ukraine. Sorry. Europe turning into a cocaine hub, says Europol. I don't know where the hell I got Ukraine from. Taiwan makes claims about Chinese military jets. Global energy watchdog warns against Russian sanctions. A massive explosion destroys hotel in Cuba. And I was a little concerned when that news came in. But it turns out it was a natural gas explosion. So, not that anything like that is good, but I'm glad to know that it wasn't some type of terrorism-related event or anything of such. So, a poll reveals Austrian stance on joining NATO. German Spiegel deletes testimony critical of Ukraine. White House reveals when Biden will sign Lend-Lease for Ukraine. Russia defies predictions of collapse, says media. UN reaches consensus on Ukraine for the first time. RT speaks to... Okay, so this is going to be some of the propaganda they've done. RT speaks to Croatian fighter captured in Ukraine. That's going to be one that's going to contain a lot of, explosive device found at Russian journalist compound in Berlin, says media. Britons flee to seek cheaper life abroad, says reports. We're still on Friday. Oh, actually, no, we're not. We just clicked over into yesterday. Let me have another sip of coffee. All right. White House outlines latest Ukraine weapons package. A mystery of the rising ruble revealed. NATO leaders ignoring nuclear war risks, says Russia. Again, this was yesterday, the news I put out yesterday. Tensions are definitely continuing to rise. North Korea fires projectile into Sea of Japan, says Seoul. Biden issues Ukraine warning to U.S. spies, says NBC. Western sanctions against Russia claim another corporate victim. Transnistria, and I'm sure I said that name wrong, reports explosions near the Ukrainian border. A German-Russian World War II museum changes name. France eyes agricultural waste to replace Russian gas. European banks reveal cost of Russia exit. Japan warns of Ukraine-like conflict. U.S. comments on calls to strip Russia a permanent UN seat. They talk... Let me back up a little bit. So they talk. We started talking about the energy thing, right? Talking about France eyeing agricultural waste to replace Russian gas. Well, you may or may not know this, but there are some farms that essentially run on waste. They've got this setup to where they put all their manure into like a chute kind of thing that's covered up, and the methane collects in there. And they literally run generators off of that methane gas. And to me, it's a pretty incredible solution. And we could be doing that across the board with waste and producing energy with it. And it's not like it's the answer. It's not, you couldn't just do that, right? I mean, that's not feasible. But if we're going to cry about all the hydrocarbon, all the the methane and stuff like that, that cow dung, because it's not just the farts, it's the dung too, then let's make use of it. Because when you collect that methane and burn it as efficiently as what they can today, well, you're going to wind up with a cleaner result than just letting the poop lay there on the ground. I know that's such a pleasant thing to think about, but there are so many solutions. But the problem is, in this country and around the world, if there's not a huge profit to be made from it, nobody's interested in doing it. For the most part, people don't want to do things just because it's good and the right thing to do. And that's how we wind up where we are. Everybody's clawing and scratching to get ahead in the rat race. There's just one problem with that. It means we're all rats. Maybe we need to stop being rats. Start working together as intelligent human beings. I don't know, I'm dreaming, but I don't know if I think I did that. Japan warns of Ukraine-like conflict. I don't know if I did that one. U.S. comments on calls to strip Russia of permanent UN seat. Russia ramps up sales of crude to India, says Reuters. No EU fast track for Ukraine, says Austrian minister. Let's see. Media reveals Musk's plan for Twitter. U.S. is directly involved in Ukraine conflict, says Moscow. I mean, Moscow has pretty much all but declared war on NATO. Without, you know what I mean? They haven't flat out said it, but Baltic nation sees wild surge in consumer prices. Canadian sniper is terribly disappointed with the military reality in Ukraine. Okay. And again, that's probably going to be a propaganda piece. Anything that is involving how well they're doing in the conflict in Ukraine is probably going to be a propaganda piece out of RT. So, case of rare disease confirmed in England. And I'm not saying that Russia is or isn't doing well, Ukraine is or isn't doing well. I don't know. I'm not there. Details emerge about explosive device at Russian media site in Germany. Still on yesterday's news. Ukraine makes claim about evacuation from besieged steel plant. Berlin clarifies stance on Russian and Ukrainian flags ban. CIA director weighs possibility of Russian nuke in Ukraine. Let's see. CIA director explains why China is carefully studying Ukraine. And I'm going to have a sip of coffee because we are to today. As I take my last sip. Hang on, I got to poke a dog. You don't mind, do you? We do the show? A few more minutes? Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you letting me do the show. Thank you. I love that kid. Siberian wildfires cause devastation and deaths. Russia makes use of Nord Stream 2. Ukraine lied to its encircled troops, says commander. And again, that's probably going to be a propaganda piece. UK promises more military aid for Ukraine. Taiwan reveals why it sanctioned Russia. Europe's biggest economy faces wave of bankruptcies, says banking chief. German industry reels from anti-Russian sanctions. A captured Ukrainian officer labels American javelins useless. And again, it's probably a propaganda piece. I don't know whether they are or aren't. I'm not over there trying to use them. I don't know that much about them, to be honest. I've used them on Battlefield. Does that count? Does that make me an operator because I've played Battlefield and used the javelin? That totally makes me an operator. What are you talking about? Miracle! All right, Ukraine Zelensky praises the U.S. and scolds the EU. A lawmaker takes heat for putting up with racism comment. Media reveals major flaws in UK housing plan for Ukrainian refugees. Foreign fighters seek adventure in Ukraine, says a captured colonel. Again, probably a propaganda piece. Americans change habits as fuel costs bite, says a poll. The reason I say that is because when they start putting out articles, stories about talking to captured soldiers and stuff like that, That's to demoralize the enemy. I don't know if I said this or not. Americans change habits as fuel costs spike, says a poll. Russia sanctions don't work, says MEP. EU's oil embargo may benefit Russia, says a Swiss analyst. A country blocking EU ban on Russian oil is revealed, says media. Let's see. World risks worst I covered that. Northern Ireland will have nationalist leader for the first time in history. World leader and first lady visit Ukraine. I think it was, I want to say that I saw Trudeau in the picture. I'm thinking, that's not a leader. Are you kidding me? Isn't that Trudeau? Isn't that schmuck Trudeau there? Yeah, Justin Trudeau walks with Urban Mayor. Yeah, that's the schmuck world leader. He couldn't lead a marching band. CDC investigating wave of hepatitis cases in kids. U.S. sanctions Russian media. Let's see. Covered that. And that. And that. Hey, we are done. We were caught up. Sweet. With that, I'm going to get the hell out of here. That's a little bit longer than usual episode, but it is what it is. And I'll get off my soapbox and go home with my ball. No. Anyway, God willing, we'll be back tomorrow to do some more of this nonsense. And I hope to see you then. So as always, God bless you. We love you. Be one with your spirit. And shalom.